Hey guys, it's Dr. Kimberly Gartman here. I'm an independent consultant with Arbonne and family practice physician who is extremely concerned with your health. And I'm going to talk to you today about dairy. I approach this subject with a little trepidation because people are really attached to their dairy, and there's a lot of controversy about this, and people can get highly emotional about it. But I feel very compelled to talk about it because I should be honest, and I really care about your health. And so I'm just going to present to you what I've learned and let you make your own decision. Okay. So here's the deal. First of all, milk, it does a body good, right? I mean, that's what we've always been taught. I remember hearing that from a very young age. But then I also recall that as an intern, I went to a medical meeting and heard a pediatrician say that dairy wasn't good for kids. And I remember being so offended because I'd always learned that dairy was good for us, right? We need it for strong bones and all of that, right? A healthy body. But as it turns out, that may not be the case. So I'm just going to present to you what I've learned, and you can make your own decision about dairy. And also, I'm sensitive to people who make their living that way. So don't think that I'm oblivious to that, because I'm not. I do understand that. But here's the deal. First of all, dairy in all its various forms is the number one source of saturated fat in the American diet. And the reason that matters is saturated fat is one of the culprits for clogged arteries, heart disease, and other health issues that we deal so heavily with, okay? This is interesting to me, and something that I didn't previously know until I started doing my homework, is that it can also be linked to an increased incidence in certain cancers. I'm going to touch on that in just a second. But also, you should know that cheese, which is the dairy that I most enjoy or want, is especially bad. Most cheese is 70% fat, you guys. So it should definitely be in moderation, whether you believe dairy is good for you or not, okay? Here's the other thing. A lot of people are lactose intolerant, and they can't break down that lactose protein in milk. And when you can't, then it causes all kinds of gut issues, inflammation, all kinds of problems in the body. It can manifest on your skin, in your joints, in your gut, all over. There's also people who can't tolerate the casein in milk, which is another protein. It can be anywhere from 95% in Asian Americans on down to one number I said was 15% in Caucasians. I'm one of those that is either lactose or casein intolerant. I'm not sure, but I don't tolerate dairy very well. Also, here's the deal. Everybody thinks you've got to have dairy for your bones, right? It is not the case. In fact, dairy does very little for bone health. It doesn't naturally have vitamin D, which is required to absorb calcium. And so if your milk has vitamin D, it's because it's been fortified with it. There are lots of other things that you can consume in your diet that have calcium that are better for you. And then the vitamin D, the best place to get that is the sun, you guys. And I'm not telling anybody to go spend hours and hours in the sun, but we need some sunlight. That's how our body absorbs vitamin D. So it is important for us. And then vitamin D helps us absorb calcium. But there's actually more calcium in some of the foods we can eat than there ever thought about being in dairy. So like green vegetables, almond milk, some of the nut milks can have more calcium in them than cow milk or dairy. So you can build strong bones on a plant-based diet, okay? And I'm not saying you have to be vegan or vegetarian, but you can build strong bones without milk. Okay, so the cancer risk. Dairy is linked to prostate cancer, so increased risk of prostate cancer if men regularly consume dairy. And then also for people who are lactose intolerant, there's an increased risk of lung cancer, breast cancer, and ovarian cancer. And people who regularly consume milk have a higher mortality rate if they have breast cancer. And that's based on studies. That's not just anecdotal or my opinion. That's based on clinical studies. The other problem is there's tons of contaminants in dairy. You can have things from hormones, pesticides, antibiotics, because cows are regularly treated for mastitis or infection of their mammary glands. There are PCBs and dioxins that can be immune modulating and cancer causing. And we don't have to have it. Y'all, dairy is not necessary for a healthy diet. and it actually can be harmful. And I want you just to think about this. Think if you can think of any other species where the adult drinks milk. I bet you can't come up with one unless we're falsely doing it. And there's no other species that drinks another species' milk, if you think about it, other than those rare, cute things where, a cow adopts a horse or something, or a dog adopts a cat. But most of the time, species don't drink other species' milk, and they don't drink milk as adults. So don't kill the messenger. Make your own decision. It's not all or none, but definitely use caution and give some thought to dairy consumption.